Hello and welcome back to Salisbury and Sweetnam Sports Podcast. It's a completely new season, so we've decided to make it season 2 of the Salisbury and Sweetnam Sports Podcast. In fact, we hadn't even spoken about that and I've just come up with that idea. Welcome, James.
Yeah, there's not a lot that I can really do about that. You sort of sprung that one right on me straight away, but okay, fair enough. Firstly, it's fantastic to be back. It feels like a very, very long time since we've done one of these. Quite a lot's changed. Of course, I hinted a few weeks back that I would be hanging up the Hoover and officially retiring from the cleaning world. That has been done. Very emotional. But I'm moving on to pastures new. So, Adam, you've been on a cricket tour recently with the PCC, Penwortham Cricket Club. Do you want to tell us about how that was and how your sporting talents took on tour?
Yeah, we had a terrific time. There were 20 or so people travelling to Warwick and Leamington Spa for a cricket tour. We played 2 games, won one, lost one. At the game that I took part in, unfortunately, we were defeated, mostly drunk on the field, and that's not going to help when you're playing against avid cricketers who want to win a game of cricket. But ultimately, on the first day, the team that was sent out put a clinical display on and defeated a pretty decent side. Just on a nightlife, we had a proper good day really. We went to Birmingham one of the nights, which took about half an hour in a taxi there and back, but it was worth it. Pop World went absolutely off. And on the second night, people were a bit hungover, but I ploughed on through and I went out in Leamington Spa. So yeah, a really cracking affair.
Yeah, what was a half an hour journey back like with a load of drunk cricketers?
Well, just entertaining, listening to music and having drunken conversation. Robbie decided to be sick in the taxi, which is...
Yeah, that's more what I was hinting at, that sort of thing.
Is never nice, yeah. That smelt, but ultimately Robbie was forgiven, as it's his first time on tour, but he did get a fine for that. Yeah. Unfortunately.
I went on a family holiday to Turkey, had 3 huge issues purely in the opening day, one of which is a personal one to me, the other 2 can strike at any time to anybody. Firstly, I have a very good pal at a Manchester airport called James, who works in the Burger King. He's an elderly man, and he's a really helpful employee at Burger King. Always looks out for the youngsters. And this year, I didn't see James, which hurt a bit, because I seem to bump into him every abroad trip I go on. So, that was quite hurtful.
Most probably because he works at Manchester Airport.
He does work at Manchester Airport, correct. He works in the Burger King, and I always see him, always works the early shift, and has done for years. But I've not seen him the last couple of times, and he's getting on a bit, so maybe James is retired, I don't know. But anyway, moving on to the 2 more important issues, and these really do hurt. What is the most important food to buy for an aeroplane, in your opinion?
A meal deal from a W.H. Smith's before you go.
No, far more important.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
Hard sweets. Serious, don't pop.
No.
To suck on. No?
Massive Toblerone.
Oh, right.
So you can imagine my disgust when I heard on the plane that somebody had a nut allergy, so that privilege was taken away from me. Well, really saddening.
I also have a nut allergy. So
yeah, I know, so you would have been that horrific person on the plane, preventing me from eating that.
I wouldn't, because I don't tell people, but
so you just take the risk?
Yeah. People who have severe nut allergies, unlike me, have every right to politely ask people not to eat nuts on flights.
And I politely didn't eat my Toblerone, but I've got to be honest, it hurt, and, you know, it's never nice, but I did get to eat one on the way back, so that made up for it. Yeah. Third issue, water in the ear.
Earache.
Earache, horrible.
I always get it in Turkey.
Yeah, it really is a nightmare. Don't enjoy it at all.
And also, you can't drink the water out of the taps in Turkey, can you?
No, you're not meant to, no.
That's not nice either.
Yeah, talking water, I went paragliding. That was a really nice experience, up in the air.
Lovely.
Really high. And, yeah, it was quite a good experience seeing all the views. Pretty weird how phobias work, because some people will be absolutely terrified of that, but heights just never do anything for me. It's a weird one.
Well, to be honest, I'm not overly keen on heights, but I can understand how that wouldn't be scary, because you got water below and stuff like that, so it wouldn't overly scare me. Something I'd quite like to do, actually, but it's always quite pricey on a holiday. However, the lira is obviously quite
6 to 1, I
to
think,
the
pound,
exchange, right? So it wouldn't have been too bad, I suspect.
So, yeah, it was a man called Fulkin who was taking me paragliding, and I was expecting sort of just like a clean sort of breeze through the air. But he asked me if I wanted to do acrobats, right? So you're in the air and you're spinning round and round on this paragliding thing. It really does make you dizzy. It puts your stomach in knots. I was very close to launching out some vomit on an unsuspecting Turkish man's head, which would have been a disaster, but I held it in, and I did well. Paragliding was a success. What was even more sort of nerve-wracking was that Fulkin took me around on his motorbike straight after, which was a horrific experience. Because if you've ever been to Turkey, people ride around motorbikes very quickly without helmets on or any sort of protection. So that was a really, really scary experience. I was thinking, Fulkin, you need to slow this motorbike down because I'm going to die here. But luckily everything was okay.
Yeah, they tend to drive like complete clowns in Turkey, maniacs. I've seen numerous crashes over the couple of spells I've spent in the country. It sounds like you've had quite a close relationship with this.
Yeah, me and Fulkin developed a bond. He took me through the air, and then he took me on a really high-paced ride on his motorbike, and nearly killed me in the process. I was hanging on to Fulkin for dear life.
Right.
My cap actually flew off. I had to go back and retrieve that. And he actually seemed like annoyed that I was quite worried on this bike. He didn't seem to think there was any need to be. There definitely was. He was driving very quick. But anyway, moving on to the world of sport. Windsor Park was the destination for Carl Frampton's homecoming. It was a night that was meant to be all about him. We're going to talk firstly about the man who took the bulk of the attention out of the way. And that's the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury. Now he's back, had his second fight. And before we go into Deontay Wilder, exclusively looking at this in context as just being his second fight, I was happy if you look at it that way.
I was also quite happy. I thought it was an extremely good performance. When you take it into consideration the amount of weight Tyson Fury's lost in recent months and the year that's gone by, I think it was an extremely good performance. His movement was like that we saw in Dusseldorf that night. Obviously not to the extent of that, because that was an outstanding performance. But we saw glimpses of what he showed that night. And yeah, hugely encouraging as far as I'm concerned. He evaded the punches that Pianetta was throwing at him with relative ease, and that's what we like to see from the master of missed punches.
Yep, that's a really good one. But yeah, Fury, especially with the rope, you can see the talent is well and truly still there, and there's no doubt in my mind that he can reclaim that form. But what we've got to be worried about now is that he's not quite at his best yet. Deontay Wilder got in the ring, and that fight has been confirmed. Deontay Wilder, although he lacks a lot of the technical ability that Tyson Fury has, I heard an excellent comparison. Tyson Fury has a toolbox full of 25 tools. Deontay Wilder's got a toolbox with just 3 tools in it. But Tyson Fury's tools are all rusty, whereas Deontay Wilder's tools are nice, shiny, and sharp. Which is a bit worrying because it really does only take one from Deontay Wilder. And it would be a shame if one of the most talented heavyweights we've ever seen in Tyson Fury has taken this fight a little too early. I've got to criticise the management from MTK and the promotion from Frank Warren. I think this is a rush deal. You can't blame Tyson for taking the fight. He's a fighting man. But he's not in a fit shape yet. He's not going to be at his best. And it will be tragic if he loses because he's not ready.
It is too early, ultimately. And it is pretty poor management from Warren. For me, he's looking for that quick buck and to get one over on his long-time nemesis in Eddie Hearn. But let's just hope that the huge talent that Tyson Fury has shines through and he can regain what is rightfully his, and that is the WBC Heavyweight Championship of the world.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was thinking about this the other night. Straight after it was announced, all I could envision in my head was a Deontay Wilder right hand detonating on the kid of Tyson and it all going up in flames. But the more I think about it, if anyone on the planet is capable of somehow pulling this off, it's Tyson Fury. He's special, he's a freak of nature, and as a huge fan, I really hope he does this. And I don't think I've ever been more emotionally attached to a boxing match. For me, Fury has to win this. It's the be-all and end-all.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that the pair of us will be an absolute nervous wreck that night. The amount of comments we've put all over social media that Tyson Fury is the greatest heavyweight on the planet at the moment, and for him to get sparked out by Wilder would be a real issue. However, in my opinion, Tyson Fury has got the tools at this current time to defeat Wilder. Even if he was completely 100% hit like he was against Klitschko, I think we'd still be having the same conversation. Ultimately, if he gets hit, it's over. But I really fancy Tyson Fury to evade that.
Yeah, we have to hope that he absolutely bamboozles the Bronze Bomber and runs away with a unanimous decision, which will be difficult to get in Vegas. You know, there's been a few bad ones as of late. But, you know, if there's a man who can win it convincingly enough, it will be Fiero. And we have to hope that somehow he's near his best. Firstly, is Tyson Fury now the undisputed king of the ring walk?
Absolutely, yeah.
Maya He, Maya Who, followed by Sweet Home Alabama. I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, Sweet Home Alabama really brought some laughter to my chops. I was really entertained by that. And as was Deontay Wilder, who was having a real sort of sing and boogie to that particular record.
So after a weekend that was mostly business-like for the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, he felt like he needed some time to refresh. And how'd you do that, you ask? You go to Nando's for some chicken. So Deontay found himself in the restaurant in Belfast, enjoyed himself, maybe having a butterfly burger or any other sort of chicken. But he was having a good time enjoying a meal when the Furious One's very good friend and middleweight champion of the world, Billy Joe Saunders, decided to show his face. So he strolls over to Deontay Wilder, cool as you like. Deontay stands up and asks Billy Joe about a comment he made in the media about him being a racist. So he asked Billy Joe, "Did you call me a racist?" Billy Joe replies, "Yes, I did." A scuffle erupted, and Billy Joe Saunders bounced half a lemon and herb off the bonnet of Deontay Wilder's head. So the sport of boxing has officially peaked, and there was a chicken fight in Belfast between two boxing world champions. Anyway, moving on to the man whose night it really was. Cole Frampton took on Luke Jackson, who was a slightly underestimated opponent, you know, Commonwealth bronze medalist and former Olympian, so he offered a bit more than people were saying. He wasn't quite world level, but he really gave it a go. He has an inspirational story. There was a time a few years back where he was in deep, deep depression, where he used to drive his car with his eyes closed to see how far he could go. He used to hold a bow and arrow in front of his mouth and see how far he could push himself. He's had deep depression. It's good to see him coming out of that on the better side and flying over to Belfast, and he gave it everything against Cole Frampton. But ultimately, the class of the Northern Irishman on the night was enough, and he romped home and won via the towel going in. So, you're a huge Cole Frampton fan. Are you happy that he's got his big one at Windsor Park? He's achieved that childhood dream and now goes on for a fight with Josh Warrington.
Absolutely. It's great for Cole Frampton. I've always rated him highly. I think he's a terrific athlete, a terrifically talented person. And yeah, ultimately the cream rose to the top on Saturday night at Windsor Park. Yes, it's great to see Jackson in the ring. It's a fantastic story and to even get there for Luke Jackson. But ultimately, Cole Frampton was a cut above on the night. And I make him a marginal favourite against Josh Warrington, actually.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that, because a few months back he would have been a huge favourite against Josh Warrington. But for that performance against Selby, where he showed all the determination in the world to overcome the slick boxer, has really upped his game in a lot of people's minds. And it's interesting business because obviously they're Frank Warren's two biggest draws, so he could have just kept them separate, but he's made a fight that the fans want to see. And it's going to be interesting to see where he puts it, because Josh has that huge, passionate fan base from Leeds. As we saw at the weekend, Cole Frampton can pack out Windsor Park, no problem. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Probably somewhere neutral like the O2. I make Frampton a marginal favourite like you do. Josh Warrington won't be able to walk through his punches like he did Lee Selby. But if Josh Warrington can get into the second half of that fight, Cole Frampton does gas and Josh Warrington's relentless. So I think he's an underdog, but I think it's within the realms of possibility that Josh Warrington can get a victory.
I think it'll be a cracking fight, actually. I think the build-up will be entertaining as well. Yes, I think that would sell out the L2 with relative ease. And it will be a cracker because Frampton's got a large fan base and Warrington, of course, has a renowned fan base.
Now, the first world title fight on the bill was Paddy Barnes, the Leprechaun, taking on Christopher Rosales in just his sixth fight. He dared to be great, did the two-time Olympic bronze medalist. And he was competing well in the fight. The Nicaraguan was long, rangy, and couldn't quite keep Paddy Barnes away from him early in the fight. But he ground him down and landed a killer of a body shot, which Paddy Barnes couldn't move from. Firstly, every credit to Paddy for taking the fight so early in his career, but Christopher Rosales could be a little bit special. He beat Diego Higa in Japan, he's beat Paddy Barnes now, so all the credit in the world to him, and he could be a danger in that flyweight division. Now, we're going to go a few weeks back because we didn't get the opportunity to review this. But the Dillian Whyte-Joseph Parker card was absolutely sensational. And we're going to start with the main event. Dillian Whyte-Joseph Parker, we literally got to see talent versus desire on show. Joseph Parker, one of the most talented men in the heavyweight division. Lightning quick hands, moves well, but doesn't quite have the desire to win the fights. He feels like he's willing to come second best and just get through the rounds. Dillian Whyte gave it everything, and ultimately that's why Dillian Whyte deserved to win the fight.
Yeah, Joseph Parker will be kicking himself even now after he's not won that fight. If he went even a couple more rounds earlier, then I'm convinced he would have knocked Whyte out. Whyte was literally hanging on by the skin of his teeth in that one. It got knocked out with about a minute. Got knocked down with about a minute to go, and Parker was on the verge of victory. But Whyte put in a really good display in the first 11 rounds, and ultimately was a worthy winner.
Yeah, Dillian Whyte absolutely deserves a world title fight now. There's no doubt about it. He's beaten two ex-world champions back-to-back and conquered a continent with Lucas Browne and Joseph Parker. And, you know, what's not to be underestimated now about Dillian Whyte is the power in that left hand. He wasn't renowned as a big puncher, but if you remember, on the way up, he was knocking out everybody. And it was only until he wobbled Joshua with that left hook that his shoulder popped out of place, and he couldn't quite get that power back until earlier this year in March. He's knocked out Lucas Browne cold, and he knocked down Joseph Parker heavily, who's renowned for having a granite chin. So Dillian Whyte, you can't not put him in the top 5 or so heavyweights now. He deserves his shot. I think you really also have to take backgrounds into account here. Dillian Whyte grew up on the tough streets of Jamaica, where he was stabbed multiple times and even shot. He had to pull the bullet out himself. Whereas Joseph Parker grew up nice in remote New Zealand, living a very good life. So there's a little bit more dog in Dillian Whyte, and Joseph Parker just needs to bring that side out, because like I said, one of the most talented heavyweights in the world. And this fight simply came down to who wanted it more, who had the extra bit of grit. That was Dillian. So for Joseph, he needs to go see a sports psychologist, work on his mental game. It's clearly within him because he was able to get off the floor after that big left hook. But he needs a bit more. So spend some time out, rebuild, and learn how to find that inner strength when you do go into the trenches. Now moving on to the next heavyweight fight. It was one of the best of the year. Derek Delboy Chisora, Carlos Takam. Two hard men just outside that top 10. Gave it absolutely everything for 8 rounds. Carlos on top, bullied Derek against the ropes. But it was ultimately Derek Chisora who weathered the storm and found that right hand. And Derek Chisora is back on the world stage.
Yeah, you can always count on Chisora to put on a real show, a real cracker of a bout, and that's exactly what he's done yet again. I said in the build-up to this fight, he's great for his career, and that's exactly what that win is. He came out after the fight and said that it's the biggest win of his career. I completely agree. It puts Delboy back on that heavyweight map. So terrific for Delboy. I can't wait to watch him again. It's great to watch.
And the final fight we're going to cover from that bill, let's get sexy boy going, Dave the White Rhino Allen. The man who took a fight with Nick Webb on 1 week's notice when the week previous he was sat shirtless in his living room eating salted peppercorn chicken with a pint of Fanta. Not many people gave him a chance that weekend, but he threw one of the most telegraphed Donkey Kong punches I have ever seen. Not Nick Webb, spark out, unconscious. He's finally got a big win. Everybody's relieved for him, everybody's overjoyed for him. Everybody loves Dave Allen, and I'm so happy for the man.
Absolutely. Nobody saw that coming. An extremely heavy knockout. Nobody saw that coming. Maybe you saw Allen maybe getting success in patches, but nobody saw such a crashing defeat for Nick Webb. But yeah, it was great to see the emotion pour out of him after the fight as well, because he is a thoroughly decent bloke, and a great victory for Dave. So well done.
Yeah, we love Dave. So, it was the Manchester Arena that was the destination for all 12-year-olds and people who wear hype and silk as the YouTubers took to the boxing ring once again. This time, it was KSI versus Logan Paul. KSI, the man who loves to dabble a bit in FIFA, and Logan Paul, the man who was controversially famous for filming a dead suicide victim in Japan. The two YouTubers have 18 million subscribers apiece, and they truly are the biggest in their respective countries. So, in regards to the criticism again that these two men don't deserve to be there, they don't deserve this platform, they aren't very good at boxing, etc., etc. I agree to a certain extent, but you've also got to look at it, they are businessmen. If people are interested, then it will sell. And ultimately, these people generate more interest in money than your average boxer. So this is just the way it is. It was always bound to bring media attention. Just think of yourself, maybe, if you're a casual fan. Would you rather watch two boxers you don't know, or Liam Gallagher versus Robbie Williams, for example? Big names bring big eyeballs and big attention. So that's basically what it was. In regards to the actual fight, KSI, the far smaller man, he had slightly more boxing experience. Logan Paul, definitely the more athletic of the two. He started well, won the first couple of rounds off the jab and just his sheer size and strength. But big muscles catch up with you in this sport, especially when you're not used to carrying them around. Logan Paul was blown out of his arse after the first couple of rounds, and KSI really took control. He won the third and the fourth. Then Logan Paul came back, had a second win, won the fifth, landed some big shots, and then KSI nearly had him out on his feet in the sixth and final round. It went to points, and I think a draw was definitely a fair result. I had it 3 apiece. It was interesting to see how many boxing, not fans, but YouTube fans struggled with the concept of boxing scoring. They seem to be adding the scores together rather than understanding that it was a majority draw. But it is what it is. They'll rematch in America. People are talking as if it was a fix. It wasn't. Rematch clauses are very, they happen quite a lot in this game. It's not a rare occurrence at all. Co-main event, it was the brothers of those two men. It was Deji versus Jake Paul. Deji, once again, very small, but he did manage to bust up Jake's face in the first round. I was very disappointed with Jake Paul's performance. I thought he was going to be a bit of an athlete, but he wasn't. He was poor. Then he caught out Chris Brown at the end of the fight for, a battle between two men. Chris Brown usually likes to punch women, so it'll be interesting to see if he takes it. But yeah, Jake, the bigger man, it was a bit of a mismatch. And YouTube boxing was a success once again, although at a poor standard. Now moving on to the football. Jose Mourinho. What are we going to do? Is he to blame for Manchester United's recent disappointments, or is it more of a team issue, or is it an Ed Woodward issue?
I think it's an issue all throughout the football club. Ultimately, United have spent a hell of a lot of money in recent times, which means Mourinho hasn't spent well at all. But I don't know what's going on at United at the moment. Obviously, they've got Manchester City, who are an absolute cut above. They're absolutely nowhere near at the level that Manchester City are at. Is that because of the manager? Partly because he hasn't spent well. He's not coaching as well as Guardiola. Yes, the board have questions to answer as well. And also the players. They just look lethargic on the pitch. They look so slow and languid in their build-up. I don't know what's going on at United. But once is the show, they won't finish above their noisy neighbours. However, Mourinho is a winner. United are a winning club. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them in that top 2, 3, 4 in the slightest. You're a Man United fan. What's your take on it?
I think it's a difficult one, really, to talk about. I think Jose Mourinho asked for his centre-back and he should have got it. I think he needs more backing from the club. I think the fans need to get behind him more. It's never good for the team moral for their manager to be slated in the press, on Twitter, etc., etc. So I think people need to get behind Jose. We know that he's a good manager. We know what he's done at clubs such as Chelsea, Porto, Inter Milan, etc. So I think a bit of belief is what's needed. It wasn't an overnight success for Alex Ferguson. It's not been an overnight success for Jose Mourinho. But I've got no doubt that the class of the man is enough to eventually win us a Premier League title once again.
Fair enough.
Yep. So obviously, United. You're more of a Preston North End fan. Your season's kicked off once again. Are you happy with how it's gone?
Yeah, overall, we started the season well. We defeated QPR. Went to Swansea the next week. Extremely frustrating afternoon. We were probably the better side over the course of the 90 minutes. We were awful in the first half an hour, but started to get a grip on the game. And then you tell me how we haven't scored in the second half to force a point. And then live in front of the Sky cameras against Stoke City, we put in a great performance and ultimately should have gotten all 3 points. One thing we are lacking is that cutting edge in attack. We need a striker, a target man who is going to help Nmicha, the new loan signing from Manchester City, to score goals. So yeah, it's encouraging. However, we're just lacking that spark, that sort of next piece in the jigsaw to finally push on and get into the playoffs.
Yeah,
But for me, I don't think we will get into the playoffs this year with that one. But the loan market is still open.
Now, you mentioned City briefly there. Of course, they've had the disastrous news that Kevin De Bruyne is going to be out for a number of months, but they're still winning big. They won 6-1 over the weekend. And you see them walking the Premier League once again, despite the absence of one of their best players?
Yeah, I think Manchester City are a terrific team, coached terrifically, and ultimately the best team in England. So, yeah, I personally think they'll walk the Premier League. And there's this new a documentary coming out about Manchester City, like a fly on the wall documentary, and yeah, I'm sure that'll be a cracking watch. I haven't got round to watching it, but I would like to watch that to see the ins and outs of Guardiola's coaching.
What club do you think could push them the most this season? Would you be the Scousers, Liverpool? Would they be the ones to push them?
I think Liverpool's done some really good business in the transfer window, signed some great players. You've got Chiesa, etc. But I think Manchester City are ultimately too strong. I won't be surprised to see Liverpool runner up at all. However, one thing about Liverpool, they have to win something this year, otherwise it is a failure for Klopp, in my opinion. Hasn't won anything at Liverpool as far.
Do you think Klopp gets far more praise than he deserves?
Of course he does. Liverpool play this style of play that everybody enjoys watching, including myself. But ultimately they haven't turned that into silverware. Yes, they got to the Champions League final last year and they did okay in the league, but ultimately they need to be better and win silverware. But yeah, they've done some good business.
Yeah, moving on to the European football, Atletico Madrid defeated Real Madrid 4-2 to win the Super Cup. And were you impressed by their victory?
Yeah, look, we're always impressed by Atletico. They tends to soak up a lot of pressure and ultimately get results by outscoring the opposition. It's not only by low margins. It's surprising to see 4-2, but it was after extra time. I really like Simeone as a manager, actually. I think he's a terrific manager. But he's another one who doesn't play overly exciting football to watch. I could get slated if he came over here. But he's doing a cracking job at Atletico, and they were good value for their Europa League success.
So we've got the 3 nominees for the World Player of the Year, the Balon d'Or. We've got Cristiano Ronaldo, Luka Modric, and Mohamed Salah. Now, 2 questions. Are you surprised by Messi's absence? And is Mohamed Salah the first Egyptian player to ever be nominated for this award?
Yes, Mohamed Salah is. However, Amiyazaki
should have been nominated for that.
Could have been
unbelievable season at Wigan.
He was terrific that year. He had a poor World Cup Messi, but replicated what he always does in the league ever Barcelona. So yeah, he can feel a bit unlucky considering that Barcelona romped the league as well. But yeah, Modric was terrific in the World Cup, so he's great value. He is probably the best midfielder on the planet. Mohamed Salah had a terrifically groundbreaking year for Liverpool, and Ronaldo does what he does best. But for me, it should be Mohamed Salah.
Mohamed Salah, okay. Moving on to WWE, the Summerslam, the biggest event of the summer, was back in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. We're going to kick it off with the Intercontinental Championship. Seth Rollins defeated Dolph Ziggler in a match of who has the greasiest hair in the WWE. And Dolph Ziggler was managed by Drew McIntyre, the chosen one. Are you happy to see Drew back in the game? I always felt he was a bit underutilised. Of course, he was handpicked by Vince McMahon himself.
I think Drew McIntyre's a bit irrelevant in this day and age, unfortunately. He always was irrelevant, though. You don't think he was challenging for that sort of intercontinental title, but yeah,
he was always built to go on and do something massive, though.
Yeah, he ought to, because he was ultimately the chosen one. But can you sort of sell a Scotsman with greasy hair, with little personality, to go on and do big things? Not for me.
Yeah, for me, I think they need to get rid of this greasy hair look. I think there's just too many of them.
Yeah, they just oil themselves up to the max, don't they? It's a bit of a joke.
Moving on to the tag team match, the Bludgeon Brothers took on the New Day for the Tag Team Championships. The New Day were defeating the Bludgeon Brothers with relative ease. You know, they were doing really well, but unfortunately the Bludgeon Brothers took it upon themselves to purposely get themselves disqualified, and then they retained the titles. Moving on, a heartbreaking one for you, Adam. Kevin Owens was defeated inside 1 minute and 50 seconds by the monster among men, Braun Strowman.
Yeah, it's the whole company at its most vintage for me. That it's just a complete and utter joke. Why would you kill off a career like that? Because now there's no going back for Kevin Owens. He's got beaten inside a minute against Braun Strowman. There is no coming back. And for me, Kevin Owens is a real talent, so it's just wank.
The triple threat match for the Women's Championship, Charlotte Flair versus Carmella versus Becky Lynch. Carmella, the reigning champion, going in. The Princess of Staten Island, as she's known. She was defeated by Charlotte Flair. The WWE Universe was in absolute dismay. They wanted a Becky Lynch win. Becky attacked her after the match, and I'm assuming that's going to be a big storyline going forward. Then we had Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles. I believe Samoa Joe is the most talented man of the new breed of WWE. I don't think there's many people to compete with him. The big storyline around this was that Samoa Joe believed that AJ Styles wasn't very good to his family. So AJ Styles was sitting. AJ Styles actually had his family ringside, and Samoa Joe was saying stuff to Styles' child like, "Your daddy's not coming home tonight. I'm going to be your daddy," which must be quite intimidating when it's coming from a 25-stone Samoan. The daughter looked a bit distressed. I'm not sure if she knew what was going on or not, but it was a bit weird. Anyway, AJ Styles won by disqualification and retained his title. A bit weird that the WWE Championship match was on so early in the night. But anyway, a match that's been 8 years in the making. The Miz versus Daniel Bryan. A rivalry that's been going on ever since The Miz was his mentor on NXT. The Daniel Bryan showed the talent he's got, but it was ultimately The Miz that won the match by using his old tactics. He got a ring off Maurice and used that ring to put on his hand and delivered a mighty left hook, which left Daniel Bryan unconscious. And I know you're a big pioneer for The Miz, so are you happy that he got a big victory?
Absolutely, I'm delighted. I really enjoy watching The Miz. I think he's a cracking athlete, I really do. I also quite like Daniel Bryan, but I'm happy enough with The Miz winning it.
Very saddening result. Shinsuke Nakamura defeated Jeff Hardy for the WWE United States Championship. That hurt a lot, you know. Jeff, a legend of the game, so would have been nice to see him get a big victory on a pay-per-view, but it wasn't to be.
It's good to see Jeff Hardy on the scene again on that world title level anyway. So, good.
Should be. And somebody who's won a world title in less than 150 days since her debut, that is Ronda Rousey. She dominated Alexa Bliss. She seemed absolutely overjoyed. And although I don't think Ronda Rousey should have been fast-tracked to the extent that she has been, looking at her as a person, although I'm not a huge fan of Ronda, I don't think she's the nicest person in the world. It's good to see her come back from the brink of depression, you know, hugging her husband in the crowd. She was absolutely overjoyed to be cheered on by the WWE Universe. So good for her, and I hope she does well. Finally, in the main event, Roman Reigns defeated Brock Lesnar and therefore defeated your childhood, I imagine.
Yeah, pretty much, but it's quite clear now that Lesnar's going to go to UFC to fight Daniel Cormier anyway.
He was tweeting during the match, actually. Sorry to interrupt you. Daniel Cormier tweeted exactly what I was thinking. I was looking at Brock's body thinking he looks a lot softer than usual. So I'm wondering if Brock's getting off the steroids. As you know, he's getting tested quite frequently now.
Yes.
That's what I've got to imagine it is.
Yeah, it hurts the ego a bit in terms of the childhood, but ultimately, I could have predicted that result because ultimately he's going into the UFC.
Moving on to the UFC, we've got a big schedule coming up. Firstly, September 8th, the man from Liverpool, Darren Till, takes on Tyron Woodley to try and become Britain's second UFC World Champion. He's an excellent striker, Darren. He'll have a huge height and weight advantage over Tyron on the night. He's getting a lot of criticism, though, that he doesn't deserve this shot due to him missing weight last time around. Would you be worried from a business perspective to set a man in who ultimately missed weight by 4 pounds last time around?
Look, we seem to speak on missing weight every week on this show. I personally think it's a joke, and I would not be happy to manage people who miss weight.
Yeah. But regardless, Darren's got this shot. I think it was very harsh on Colby Covington. He worked very hard for that interim belt. They stripped him because he's having no surgery and he'll only be ready by November, which is disgusting on the UFC's part because obviously they have to fill those pay-per-views. But that doesn't mean that you should take it out on a fighter who's injured. So I'm not really happy about it. But Darren Till, he's taken on Tyrone Woodley. He'll be looking to win. Fighting is his only focus. He actually said in an interview earlier this week that he doesn't overly care about his kids. He's got no real interest in them at the moment. He's more focused on winning that title and being the greatest of all time. So that's his mindset.
I don't like that.
I'm not a huge fan of it either, but good luck to him in that fight. Hopefully Britain has another champion. Mark Hunt versus Oleanic will be the main event of UFC Russia for the very first time. We've been huge advocates for Mark Hunt ever since we started this show all those weeks back. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I went for a holiday in Turkey and I've actually started reading his autobiography. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. Incredible story, really recommend it. From an abusive childhood to stealing cars to gambling addictions to meth addictions. He's really lived a life, Mark, so I really recommend a reading. Hopefully he gets a big win out in Moscow.
I'm not trying to get beaten and retire, because ultimately he could do to retire now. He's getting on a bit more, Con.
Yeah, he's having 5 more, he says, though.
He's
44, I think?
Getting absolutely hammered in the head in every fight, and he will live no life after the UFC. So he could do to retire now, so he can.
He's been saying that he wants to die in the ring, at the octagon. He's just addicted to fighting.
Well, who wants to see that?
Him. He says he wants to die as long as it's not... We don't want to see it.
No, you're watching it.
I don't, but he says he wants to die as long as it's not at the hands of a drug cheat, which is difficult in this day and age in the UFC. Yeah. But then we've got the big one, which has finally been confirmed. Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 229, October the 6th. And as a casual fan looking in, does this feel very big to you? Of course, Conor smashed that bush window looking for Khabib after Khabib assaulted one of Conor McGregor's teammates. He flew halfway across the world to try and get a fight with him. And are you excited as an outsider looking in?
No, this fight means absolutely nothing to me, other than I'd like to see McGregor get knocked out, because I don't like him.
Yeah, there's a very simple path to victory for both men. If Khabib Nurmagomedov can get a hold of Conor McGregor, he'll ragdoll him around that room with relative ease. He'll pin him down, he'll ground and pound him. Conor McGregor, I don't think's got the desire and the bollocks to, work through a hard fight. So you can imagine that Khabib Nurmagomedov will get the victory quite easily if he can get a hold of him. But it's a big if. His footwork isn't brilliant. Conor McGregor's is. He's one of the best boxers in the UFC. And the precision and accuracy on those hands is nothing to joke about. So there's nothing saying that if that left hand detonates on Khabib's chin, who can be hit, that will get a new champion. Nate Diaz is back. He's taken on Dustin Poirier at Madison Square Garden. The man's been out for about 2 years. He's one of the most exciting fighters in the game, but he's taken on a very tough challenge against Dustin Poirier, who's been on a bit of a roll as of late. He's defeated 4 ex-champions back-to-back. He finally gets his big moment at MSG, but there's not a main event yet, which is interesting. They have to find something bigger than Nate Diaz, which is going to be tough. Rumours that maybe John Jones could be back, or a super fight between George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva, but we need something big to headline this card. Final bit of UFC news. UFC 227 took place about a week ago. TJ Dillashaw retaining that bantamweight title. He defeated Cody Garbrandt, his arch nemesis. Once again, Cody, talent in the world, but he gets overly emotional when he hurts somebody. He runs in, but TJ stays composed, and that's how TJ won the fight. He did it exactly the same way he did the first time. Moving on to the co-main event, Henry Cejudo defeated Demetrius Johnson and absolutely shocked the world. Demetrius, I've given a hell of a lot of stick to on this show for refusing to fight the best. And ultimately, he took on somebody who he'd already defeated in a round, but this time Henry had learnt. 2 extra years of mixed martial arts training had made him from not just a wrestler, he can now strike as well. His outside tricks were tremendous, and he grappled Demetrius Johnson to a 5-round decision, and then called out TJ for a champion versus champion match. In conclusion, Love Island's finally come to an end. Bit emotional. It was about time though. Danny and Jack, worthy winners. They walked it ultimately.
Yeah, it seemed to drag on a bit this year, actually.
That's what I thought.
It wasn't as entertaining as previous years. But ultimately, yeah, Danny and Jack were a lovely couple and well worthy of the crown.
Yeah. Quick point. Anything worth of note over the whole series? Paul Paul and Laura managed to bag second. Very happy with Paul. He's a bit of a shithouse. Quite like that. I think he definitely would have taken the money had he won.
No.
You know, have you ever seen that video on Twitter where...
Golden
Balls. Yeah. And that horrible woman nicks 50 grand off that man. I can imagine Paul being that sort of man.
No.
Steal.
No, I can imagine Paul being a really nice bloke who is loved up with Laura and a great couple.
Upgrade or downgrade from Britney Spears, in your opinion?
Upgrade. I don't rate Britney at all.
Don't rate Britney at all.
A musical.
But you did go to see her at Manchester Arena not too long ago.
Nope, a cracking night.
Anyway, so yeah, that's Love Island. In conclusion, the Do Bit Society, weird from the start, basically just a swingers club. We look forward to next year, maybe a week or two short, hopefully, because it was dragging a little bit. Family Guy finally gets its movie, long overdue, and should be a huge financial success for Mr. McFarlane. Novak Djokovic becomes the first man in history to win all 9 Masters in tennis, and that's a tremendous achievement for him. And Impractical Jokers is back on Monday with another new series to play us out. It's their theme song. Goodbye to you all.
Goodbye.
Prepare for something amazing.
Hey, mustache, what's up?
I want my mommy. I will never forgive you.